I've met many of you, but just in case I have not, I'm Angie Pilgrim. I'm the Director of Community Impact here at the St. Croix Valley Foundation. And I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for being here and taking the time from a very busy time of year and very busy sector, the nonprofit sector, to be here to learn with us. We really appreciate that. And I also want to take a moment to thank our presenter today, Cecily Harris, and I'll introduce her in a minute, but it's so good to have her with us today. I did just want to take a couple minutes to do a quick overview of the St. Croix Valley Foundation for those of you who are not familiar with our work. We are the region's community foundation. We were founded in 1995 with the mission to enhance the quality of life here in the St. Croix Valley. We do that by supporting 10 completely volunteer-run affiliated foundations in 6 counties throughout the St. Croix Valley. And those include Chisago and Washington counties, and then Burnett, Polk, St. Croix, and Pierce counties here in Wisconsin. So we cross the beautiful St. Croix River. And again, we work with those 10 affiliates very closely. One thing that we do to enhance the quality of life here in the Valley is support area nonprofits, so all of you. And we do that through both grant dollars and grant making, as well as professional development. And along those lines with professional development, that's why we're here today. Back in 2017, we launched a program we call Consultants in Service. And 1 minute, I'm seeing a couple extras joining us. I'll let them in. Welcome, welcome. So Consultants in Service was founded in 2017. And the idea of Consultants in Service is to really help small nonprofits, those with operating budgets of $500,000 and less, by matching their unique needs with experts. And those experts volunteer their time, which is really wonderful. Those consultants do everything from strategic planning to board development, to organizational development. We even had one match where a board treasurer needed help with QuickBooks. And so we matched them with a consultant that was able to work with them to learn QuickBooks. So that program does a little bit of everything. And interested organizations that need that one-on-one help can complete a really straightforward application on our website. And then we match you with the most qualified consultant that is available. So if you're interested in learning anything more about Consultants in Service, please visit our website. That's scvfoundation.org, or shoot me an email or give me a call. I'd be happy to tell you a little bit more about that program. So thank you again for being here today. And now I am happy to introduce our presenter, Cecily Harris. So though Cecily went to high school, I believe in St. Paul, right, Cecily? She moved away and spent 40 years in the San Francisco Bay Area before returning pretty recently to Minnesota. She is a very accomplished nonprofit and community leader. Her nonprofit strategic planning and fundraising services practice focuses on fundraising, board and organizational development, marketing, program design, and strategic planning. We are so lucky to have her involved in the Consultants in Service program. We've matched her several times. So thank you, Cecily, one-on-one. And then we're so happy to have her today presenting for the CIS on the Road series. And this is our first of 4 in this series. And I recently learned that she has 2 adorable bunnies, one of which is very mischievous and really little. And who knows, maybe there'll be a sighting of those bunnies here today. So thank you, Cecily, so much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you. And I told Cecily to just boss me, so I'll be advancing slides as she instructs. And thanks again for being here.
Great. Thank you, Angie, for the introduction. And will you present the slides, please? Well, greetings. My name is Cecily Harris, and as Angie said, I'm a consultant who provides fundraising and strategic planning services for nonprofit organizations, corporations, and government. Probably like many of you, I backed into fundraising. I had just finished an MBA, and I really thought I'd be staying with my employer, American Express, in some capacity. And all of a sudden, I was attending a nonprofit conference, sitting next to a really cool lady who is executive director of a nonprofit similar to Minnesota Council of Nonprofits. We met just after that, and she hired me as her first marketing coordinator. I taught a lot of fundraising classes as I was learning about fundraising. And now I've fundraised as an employee, a consultant, a board member, and volunteer for numerous nonprofits, foundations, cities, and counties. And I'm still learning, but I've been doing this for over 30 years. Fundraising changes constantly, but I think it still has the same basic principles. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, let's do a quick Zoom poll and see who's on the call with us today. So if Angie can pop up the survey, and I'm sure many of you have done this before, you can click the button to tell us what you represent and then click submit at the bottom. And we'll take a look at the poll results later. So hopefully I can share some common sense best practices that I've learned over the years that might be useful for those who are present on the call and those who might see the presentation later. Next slide, please. I'm going to try to simplify fundraising into a few common sense best practices over about 45 minutes. And of course, I can't cover everything, but I'm going to try to cover some basics that you may already know, but maybe you could think about them in a slightly different way. With fundraising, if you break everything down into a few steps, it isn't as overwhelming. Fundraising is about relationship building, building strong relationships with people, turning them into acquaintances and into donors, and keeping them happy so they give to your organization over and over. You want lots of friends and lots of friends who give money. And asking and fundraise in general takes practice. We all have many skills that we can adapt. We've all asked friends and acquaintances to do things. Make cookies for a church fundraiser, paint signs for a nonprofit event, even take a friend to the airport. Fundraising is asking, but it's also negotiating. And parents and teachers know that skill competency well. But frankly, we all negotiate in whatever profession we're in, so it can come naturally. And in fundraising, we need to use many skills. So asking people to do things isn't hard. With fundraising, it's thinking about the tasks and lining up the right person to do them that will make fundraising successful. Now let's look at some fundraising truisms that are on the screen in front of you. I'm sure you're familiar with many of them, but hone in on the last one. The last one is the very most important one. Listen and learn from people you meet and want to get to know. Listen, listen, listen. Don't just talk about your organization. You want to hear what they think. And thinking a little more about truisms, there are a couple that I especially dislike hearing. One is, I can't do fundraising. I don't know enough about the organization, or I'm afraid to ask people for money. Well, gosh, that's nonsense. So I'm hoping this short presentation will break people of some of these myths and find out how simple fundraising can be. And as you all know, there are many sources of revenues, but individual donors are the most important, as our gifts are renewable, can grow, and the relationship can end with a final gift. So that's what I plan on talking about today. And Angie, can you show us poll number 1 results, please? Okay, so thank you. And again, welcome everyone. Next slide, please. So today I'm focusing on live solicitations rather than passive solicitations like letters and emails. And depending on the size of your organization and your role in it, the following slides might suggest some activities that can take place weekly or monthly. Again, it's common sense. So before you ask someone for money, stop and think about what information you need to have on hand as part of that ask and for answering someone's questions in the dialogue. Perhaps your organization has mission and vision statements, case studies, and a long history of organizational achievement, but maybe not. These 6 no's on the screen are important for staff, board, and volunteers. And if you haven't already put these facts together, it's time to get on it. And maybe it'll be good time to brainstorm all of them. So your organizational story, again, this is what you do and why, and what are your core programs. These are an element in your 30 or 90-second elevator speech. Core values. What organizational values really address your mission? What beliefs guide your work? What do you want to model to the community? This is all very important, and I know some organizations develop a working credo that outlines how decisions are made. Real needs of your organization. Well, of course, those are financial. How much do you need each year to run the organization? How much do you need for a rainy day fund or that 6 months of operating funds it's nice to have on hand? And beyond money, what do you need? In people and volunteers and staff and equipment and partners and facilities and more. Knowing these needs helps build sustainability and helps clarify fundraising. And your plan. This is a big element of this presentation today. What is your current strategy? And in that strategy, what are the current fundraising activities? This is the classic pie chart of fundraising. Individuals, earned income, corporate gifts and grants and events. It's all very important to know because someone may ask you who else gives and at what percentage. Who you know. You must have a database of donors, members, and volunteers. And this list must be continually built upon because you need to replace people who've moved on. Continue to add people who ask to be added, who attend your events and programs. I've been told that maybe 10%, maybe 15% of most organizational databases are out of date. People have moved, they've passed on, and they're no longer viable parts of your database. And your roles of friendship. Gosh, friendship is about reciprocity. It's about not what we get, but what we give. It's about that third entity of what we create together, the not me, the not you, but it's about us together. So in sum, these 6 no's are kind of the who, what, when, where, and how of your organization. It's another way to define it all. Next slide, please. So here's another poll that I'd like to ask you to complete just to get a sense of where you find new individual donors. And again, please click one or more that are relevant to you. And then of course, hit submit. Thank you. Well, is that poll working, Angie? Should we just move on? Ah, there we go. Oh, thank you. Good, so I'll be talking about these and some others. Next slide, please. Okay. Oh, I see. I need to close it on my screen. So let's talk about matchmaking, which I consider another word for fundraising and friend raising, which is introducing your friends, acquaintances, and community members to your organizations. And as you think about the many ways to engage them, be sure to be thinking about concrete plans of nurturing these new friendships to develop them into fruitful relationships, both for them and for your organization. One-on-one can come from personal advocacy. You should always be ready to talk about your organization. Maybe you're in a line at a grocery store or at a party or in a park, and be creative. An introductory mailing is not a solicitation necessarily. It introduces people to what you do, and you may include a Post-it note or an article or trends to tell people about how your organization fits into things, but be sure to make this interactive. Maybe have a survey in it, maybe have a way to reach out to you or an invitation to something. Another's may be one of those tried and true breakfast with friends or speaker events. Another informal way to share information about your organization in conjunction with educating people on a related topic. If they've come to your event, they're showing some kind of interest. Community sleuthing is another one I like. And government agencies are great at this. They tell a story of what they want to do and ask questions and listen to responses. People love to be asked what they think. It has many benefits. It can inject new energy into programs, add potential partners, increase demand for services. And of course, tours and open houses are also gold mines. They can highlight programs and activities. So always be strategizing of new ways to meet people one-on-one. Informal activities might include house parties, which I think are great. When a host or hosts invite their friends over, people you may not know. It's a way of bringing the organization's mission to a new group of people, and there may be an ask, of course. Other organized group events may highlight what the organization already does. It may be a naturalist-led hike in a park, a behind-the-scenes tour of a theater or a gallery. People like coming to these events, and they can be a little bit anonymous. Barn raising and fundraising parties are similar. You can invite all kinds of people, existing donors, board members, influential people in the community. So there are a lot of different people there, some who know you well, some who may not. You can also do your annual meeting differently. Some organizations are required to have annual meetings, which can be kind of boring business meetings. Well, shake it up and turn it into a celebration. Invite people who wouldn't normally be invited and have some fun. And you can work the crowd at this as well. So there are an infinite number of ways to meet people that could become donors. Next slide, please. So what should you know before you ask people for money? Well, of course, you need to be prepared. And you can do all kinds of primary and secondary research about these donors. And this knowledge will be woven into future conversations and can assist you with lining up the best solicitor. Did they go to the same school, work at the same office, or live in the same neighborhood? Do they serve on a board of a similar organization? So that's the prospect research, and the data collection is kind of putting it together. Then you'll want to evaluate their gift potential, again, from information that you may have on hand. If they're in your database or a past donor, really know their giving history before you speak with them, because people expect you to know and remember how many gifts you've made and how large. And continue to thank them, of course, for their continuing support. You can also ask your board and key development officers and volunteers about who they know and what they know about them. The contract services are some of those online databases like Wealth Engine and Donor Perfect. And they have a lot of research that they've found. You know, they use county assessor records and Wall Street Journal and magazines and newspapers. You know, some of it's good, some of it isn't quite as good as what you can collect locally about people. Next slide, please. So why do people give? Well, let's think a moment about this. Of course, the first one is the most obvious because they were asked. And we need to remember, if we don't always ask them, they may not think to give something. The worst thing is leaving a meeting with someone and you haven't asked them. So money holds different meanings for different people. It can be freedom, achievement, potential for change, or impact, or something else. And people at all socioeconomic levels give. Some studies I've read state that many people in disadvantaged communities often give a higher proportion of their discretionary income to charity. So I'm including faith-based charities here. So grow your base of donors at all levels of giving. So again, looking at this list of why people give, interest can be, it could be their education or profession or hobby that makes your organization relevant to them. Involvement may be volunteering, they work in the industry, or they're a beneficiary of the services of your organization. Tradition might be their family is given, religion or beliefs, stewardship or impact on giving. But again, the most important reason is that they were asked. Next slide, please. So what is the effectiveness of people making a solicitation? Well, the traditional hierarchy says that peer-to-peer giving is the very best. And assuming you've thought about who do you know in that equation. And peer-to-peer, you know, might be a volunteer or a board member. It could be one person or a team. But it's people who can give personal anecdotes of why they financially support your organization. And in their own words, they can make a powerful case of why they did that. They share credibility and confidence in your organization. They may even tag team with you by introducing you to people and helping you with the face-to-face solicitation, or introducing you to someone so you can make that contact. A proportional asker is slightly different. It's also someone who's probably given to your organization, but as a donor, they may not be as close. They may not be a volunteer. They may have been asked by someone in your organization to make an introduction to someone because they already give and know people. You know, think of those annual reports and newsletters that have highlights of someone who's made significant donations to your organization. And I really love reading these because they're real stories and they tell you about the person and why they've chosen to give. The institutional askers, of course, are staff and board. And everybody expects staff and board to ask people for money. You know, they're the most knowledgeable, they have all the information, and they should continue to do their job, but they're not shown to be as powerful as the peer-to-peer donors. Next slide, please. So let's think about this ask I keep talking about, this solicitation. Here's some more common sense. And think about how you like to be asked for a gift. Solicitation is the process of transferring a conviction from one person to another. And the solicitor must confirm this commitment by making their gift first. So practice making an ask often because it'll change during the year. And it's based on what you're asking individuals to do, based on circumstances. The ask must be in your own words and flow comfortably from you. And depending on the person you're asking, it might be very technical or it might be for a lay person, but don't overcomplicate it. So this opening or a start is you setting the stage to make yourself and this prospect feel rapport. You know, find people or hobbies or interests in mind, and you're laying the groundwork for a solicitation, and you must ask the person for permission to solicit. You can weave this creatively into the conversation. Here's where you might insert an abbreviated case statement with the no's that I talked about earlier, the features and benefits of what you do. And again, ideally, you know a little something about the person you're approaching and even have a sense of what they can and might give to your organization. So the involvement is digging a little deeper, watching, listening, and promoting dialogue by asking them short, open-ended questions. How did you first hear about homelessness in the Valley? What do you think about mobile art galleries in county parks? How has education changed during the pandemic? So in the presentation, hopefully you know a little more about this person because you've had some conversation. Now it's time to verbalize and accentuate the positive aspects of your organization. The closing is now finishing the ask that you started when the prospect gave you permission to solicit. All you need to do now is determine the amount of the gift and how the gift will be made. Please understand the use of silence. Make the ask and then shut up. Let the silence be painful. Let it last a few minutes or until they have spoken. Don't be nervous like we all are and just keep talking to fill in that time and space. It's not going to help your case. Hopefully that person is thinking hard about the conversation you've just had and what you've asked them to do. And don't be embarrassed by a no. No's happen. And test it again to see if it's a real no. Ask if another amount may be more reasonable. And could it be in the form of a pledge, a monthly donation, or given through stock or something else? Of course, you're recognizing that the timing may be wrong. The gift request may be too big, or they may need to talk to a partner or a family member first. But thank them regardless. Leave them a package of follow-up informations or follow up by email or mail with what you promised to provide. If they state that they can or won't make a gift, maybe they can help you another way. Maybe they can introduce you to someone who might be interested in your organization. And can they make that introduction? This will really make someone feel good. People love to offer help in a way that they can. It may not be financial help. So next slide, please. Or no, I'm sorry. It's poll number 3 time. I promise this is the last poll today, and it does tie into the next slide. So every organization is different, and you need to implement what works given your staffing budget and time. But thanking donors is high priority. So please take a look at this list and think about how you thank your donors. And as usual, check a box and then submit. Okay. Thank you. And next slide, please. Here's yet another truism. Now you've got your gift. Then what do you do? Well, of course, you thank them. And I was always taught that 24-hour rule. You know, mail a letter, make a phone call, whatever is appropriate for that size of gift. So this truism of thanking them 7 times in 1 year, so you don't lose the momentum and they don't forget who you are. So let's look at this list for a moment. You know, of course, it's similar to what was in the poll. Can you count to 7 in your organization? You know, I hope you can. And I hope that you have ways to thank them that aren't just the benefits you give to members. You know, they're invitations to do things, invitations to get to know your organization a bit better. But regardless of how you do these thank yous, you need to feed and nurture your donors until it's time to ask them for the next gift. Next slide, please. So fundraising requires the creation of an annual plan for the dollars you'll need and monitoring that plan throughout the year. You need to focus on what is important. You know, understand the big picture of your organization's fundraising need and how you plan to achieve that annual goal. This helps you spend your time wisely. You need to take care of the details, create a schedule of tasks and activities needed to achieve your goals, and identify who in the organization is involved in each task. Then you're tracking progress towards your goal. You're monitoring the entire plan, but also the tasks and activities within the plan. Of course, even before COVID, circumstances could cause cancellation of an event, an activity, fundraising program. There could be loss of staff, loss of an organization, change in board priorities, but you need to keep going. You need to keep this fundraising plan going and find ways to keep your operating budget full. So let's take a look at this slide. You know, it references what I've talked about today, some of these building blocks of a fundraising plan. In building a case, I presented some fundraising truisms and the what you need to knows. To identify key donors, I talked about some matchmaking approaches and a test for readiness and why people give. To plan your cultivation and solicitation activities, I talked about effectiveness of solicitors, process of asking in 4 parts, and 7 thank yous in year 1. So of course, now you need to get out and fundraise. There's never a better time. Next slide, please. So I'd like to share some resources, and I know there could be pages and pages of resources for you, but here's some of my favorites. I hope you're familiar with the Association of Fundraising Professionals. It's an international organization that has conferences and trainings and brown bag lunch gatherings. There is a Minnesota chapter. There are also fundraising organizations focused on specific types of fundraising, like grant writing and legacy gifts and major gifts. And there are Minnesota chapters for those as well. The Minnesota Council of Nonprofits also has trainings about nonprofit organization in general and some about fundraising. They put together that fabulous directory every year of Minnesota foundations and corporations that give gifts and grants. Propel, I think, mostly talks about financial assistance to nonprofits. And of course, our St. Croix Valley Foundation, who we're working with today. So next slide, please. You know, thank you for watching this presentation. And I think we have time for questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Cecily, first I want to say thank you for that wonderful presentation. And you're right, it's all about continuing to learn. I pick up something every time I attend a fundraising professional development. So thank you. And I think I muted some of you. at the start. So I'm just asking you to unmute. And if you have any questions, please either put them in chat or unmute yourself and ask. And it looks like we have one from Janelle. How do you see the pros and cons of matching fund campaigns?
You know, that's an interesting one. You know, often you see it with, you know, annual fund letters or even special appeals for matching funds. You know, it's a great way to get additional funding to match an individual's gift. And I think the individual employee or employee family member really appreciates being able to double their gift. But I don't know that many organizations that really break this out as a separate element of individual giving.
Mm-hmm.
And
some donors are very inspired, I know, by that idea. We had a donor just recently that wanted to make a grant, but wanted to make it a challenge grant. So I'll give you this grant, organization A, if you can get everyone in the community to match. So that type of match is also an interesting.
Thank you, Angie. I was reading it somewhat differently. I was thinking of those appeals we get, and there's a long list of the corporations. Do you work at one of these? And maybe you can ask your employer to match. So what Angie mentioned, of course, is very important and very effective. You know, if a board member or the organization has money to put forward, and then there's an appeal to the community to match that, those are incredibly powerful. And do them when you can. And whether it's a part of something like Minnesota Gives or Give in the Valley, or whether it's for a Fund a Need program or a year-end program, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely
agree
with that.
Any other questions?
Or even comments. Maybe something I said triggered something in what you're doing or what you'd like to do in your organization.
You know, it's interesting. I started off in sales and failed miserably, selling advanced computer networking systems, by the way. And it always kind of surprises me how much fundraising is like sales. You're just selling something that you're very hopefully passionate about. And I know many of you on this call do just that. So good work. Oh, here's a question. What are your thoughts about online solicitations compared to direct mail solicitations?
They're, of course, very similar. And I know statistically, there are organizations looking at the different return rates generationally. I think, gosh, they've been tracking direct mail results since the 1960s. And there used to be all these wonderful statistics about how many pages there should be in a letter. It used to be 8 pages and then 4 pages. And who cares if they read it because they're only going to look at this part of the page? Well, the challenge with both of them is when you get a direct mail piece in your mailbox, you know it's that. Are you going to open it and read it? And if it's an organization you like, you're probably going to send them a check anyhow. But with online solicitations, is it actually getting to your inbox? Is it ending up in spam or junk? And are you going to open it? And are you comfortable responding that way? You know, there are people who are very technologically savvy but may not like to give online. Mm-hmm. The great thing about, on the other hand, the great thing about online solicitations is you can track the click rates. You know, you can see how many people have opened the email and then how many people have responded. Whereas the letters you're sending out in the mail, you'll know what's been returned, but you won't know how many have been opened other than the checks that come back to you. So at this time, I would still do both if you can. And maybe try a combination of them during the year, you know, testing which type is the best for your audience. And when you have a new list of people that you've acquired or you've compiled and developed over time, you may want to test it 50% with each and see what happens. Of course, they both have a cost. You know, electronically sending an appeal and processing the results, and physically mailing an appeal with the paper costs and the postage costs. It's a really good question. And I think we're all really thinking about that.
I just wanted to tack onto that, if I may, because we're all doing this right now. And in our organization, which is very small, $120,000 budget, community orchestra based in the Twin Cities, we are very targeted with this because we don't have a ton of resources. So our end of the year fundraising solicitation is only mailed out to to two different categories. One are the people who sent us stuff in the past through mail. I mean, these are our donors that are that over the course of the past 3 years, we do a 3-year grouping, have responded to mail solicitations. And the new people who we don't know much about, and those are the groups that get the snail mail version of it. But as you say, the cost of the physical cost of an online solicitation is very little, and that goes out to everybody. I mean, that's that's broadcast. That goes out to all, you know, whatever 1,200 or 1,300 or whatever people we have in the eBlast group. Everybody gets that, and as you say, then we track it. We go figure out who's opening, who's not opening, and then so we do a multiple version with a very limited budget because that's what we can afford to do, and that's what's been successful for us in the past.
Right, and another trick, I'm not sure how often it's used anymore, but do you remember the old phone-a-thons? Not KQRS, but many organizations, and I think in the 80s used to do this. They get a bunch of volunteers together and a couple pizzas, and you'd be given call lists, and you'd have a script and you have a suggested amount. And of course, today, the challenge with that is people don't answer the phone. They may not have a landline anymore, and you may not have their cell phone number. But again, it may be something to test, because there's something about calling people and the people who are willing to talk to you. You may have an interesting conversation. It may be people who already give, and it's a chance to thank them again, tell them what's happening, ask them for a gift again. But again, a lot of people don't like making phone calls. So that's another challenge, to find, you know, a group of people who are willing to be those callers. But it's another way to segment your list and find out what works.
I'll just piggyback one comment. The St. Croix Valley Foundation does not do an annual appeal, but many of our affiliates do. And what some of them did this year was they sent the mailing, so the letter in the mail, and then about 7 to 10 days later, they followed up with the email blast saying, you probably got our letter in the mail. If it's easier for you, you know, here's a link to donate online. So I thought that was clever. And then, like you said, they can track who's clicking on that and who's giving that way.
Well, and absolutely, you know, that's a great technique, because again, you're assuming all these beautiful mailing pieces you're sending out are getting directly in the hands of who it's addressed to. Well, someone in the family may bring the mail in and just sort of dump it somewhere, and it may not get to you. So again, hopefully the email gets directly to you and not someone else in your home. So we don't know a lot of these things.
Yeah, and just making it easy for the donor. Yes, maybe it's harder. I know for me to find my checkbook on any given day.
Right.
But for me to make a credit card donation online, that's good and easy. So.
Right.
Yes. Any other questions for our expert, Cecily?
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mickey.
Well, hopefully a couple of these ideas will resonate with you, and I hope all of you have a wonderful holiday season and new year, and that we're able to fundraise the way we want next year. That we'll be able to do the events and activities that we haven't been able to do over the last 20 some months.
Yes, yes. Thank you everyone for coming. It's great to see you on the screen. Hopefully we'll be able to gather in person sometime soon. See you all soon. Happy holidays. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.